Dr. Anthony Bendel, the Deputy Privacy Commissioner of Victoria. Welcome, Anthony. We have Troy Braben, the Chief Information Security Officer with Australia Post. We have Alex Wandel, Executive Director and Co-Founder of myempire.com.au. And we have Bartek Manane, a Stay Smart Online Ambassador and General Manager for MoshTix, which is a leading ticketing outlet. And we must thank the Department of Broadband Communications and the Digital Economy, who run the Stay Smart Online website, who have supported this event today. Cybersafety and privacy has certainly been in the news. Just this week, just yesterday in fact, the ACCC has announced that Australians lost $93 million in online scams in the last year, and that's just those that are reported. We've also had reports of a surveillance program called PRISM, which is monitoring and collecting data from online websites such as Google, Facebook, Skype and others for security intelligence purposes. The digital space is now essential in our daily lives, but how do we protect ourselves and our businesses and comply with privacy requirements of the law? Today the panel will be taking your questions, but first let's hear from the panellists. And Anthony, if I can start with you, is there really such a thing as genuine privacy in a digital environment?
Well, the attitude we've always taken is that the argument that you don't have any privacy at all, therefore get over it, which I think one of the leading IT providers said a few years ago, isn't right. And in fact, there are steps you can take to protect yourself, even on those sites that are subject to the PRISM program. Certainly, there's not a lot you can do about national security organisations coming knocking on the door and requiring companies to give information. But that's probably not the leading concern for most people. I think the leading concern is to take the steps you can take to protect yourself from the rest of the world and so that your information is not entirely open for everyone to see. And there certainly are steps you can do to protect yourself in that sphere, and we're keen to encourage people to do that. So I think it's, and it's not really the old thing that Justice Brandeis is often quoted as saying, that it's the right to be let alone. I don't think in the 21st century anybody really wants to be let alone. We actually want to be connected and we want to interact with the world, but we want to do it to an extent in a way that where we have some control over how we do that, and it's not just open slather. So, and there are ways you can do that as well. The law helps a bit, and there are techniques you can use as well to do that for yourself. So.
Well, we might come to some of those as we move through the forum today. But Bartek, if I can come to you now, as a small business owner, what kind of protections do you have in place to protect the security of your own business online?
So MoshTix is a leading ticketing agency, and we contain a lot of information about customers, and we're beholden to the Privacy Act, which provides certain legal obligations around the collection, storage and security of data, so we follow those. And also, being an organisation that takes quite a lot of credit card details from customers, we follow the industry, payment card industry data security standards, the PCI DSS. There are many small businesses, and if you take credit card details or payment details from many people, from customers, that's certainly an excellent set of guidelines to ensure you're protected when collecting customer data.
Now Troy, Australia Post, extraordinarily large business. What are the key challenges you face with a large organisation, and do you see it as being very different to what a small organisation should be doing?
So interesting question. Let me answer the second one first. No. Small organisation, large organisation have got the same responsibility and accountability. Certainly Australia Post is large, so 34,000 employees. We hit 11 million homes every day, hundreds of thousands of customers that interact with us online, process over $100 billion in transactions every year. So PCI is massively in scope for Australia Post. So yeah, look, size is a challenge. I think that is probably the major challenge, to be honest. Our business is so fluid, new products, new services, new customers every single day. I think every weekend we seem to be launching a new product or a new service, and certainly our customer footprint expands consistently. So the real challenge is you never stop. You are always doing something new, something different to change your business. Having said that, my role as CISO is kind of twofold. Certainly I've got to protect requirement, which is around understanding our customers, protecting their confidential information, and then protecting our business. However, probably part of what it really excites me also is the second part of my role is really the enabling role. So I want to enable our customers to transact with us online. I want to enable our business to be able to release all of those great new digital and online and social and mobile applications and services. So we can use great security, great privacy principles to help enable our businesses to do that.
We might hear a bit more about that too, but I wanted to come to you now, Alex, because you've got a bit of a sad story to tell, which I know you've made it your mission now to share your experience. But small business owner, but you previously owned a business that had an unhappy ending thanks to a hacker. Would you like to share that story with us?
Yeah, it happened actually 2 years ago this week. We lost a business. We went from, the business was Distribute IT, which was a leading domain name registrar web hosting company. Controlled about 10% of the .au domain name market. We had 40,000 hosting clients, sending millions of SMS messages and a bunch of other services. Had a malicious breach on the 11th of June, and that was a 30-minute breach where the hackers got in, and rather than stealing data, they were actually destroying the hard drives in our network. They had control of our network, and they were destroying the data files or data tables on each and every hard drive in each of the CNRAs throughout 3 or 4 different data centres that we operated. They had about 25-30 minutes access, and before we were able to get them out and get control back, wrest control back, and then we went about our disaster recovery plans from there. Over the next 10 or 11 days, we worked through the process of rebuilding a network, restoring services, and basically just trying to get the business back on track. But we ran out of time, and as a result of that, it put our accreditations at risk, or in jeopardy, and we had to move very quickly, because it was basically a decision of, do we allow nature to take its course? We'll probably lose our client base because the governing body is going to strip it from us and spread it around to the other registrars, or do we try and buy the extra bit of time we need to finish the recovery of services? And the only way we could do that was to strike a fire sale of the assets with one of the other competitors, and that entire transaction took place in under 12 hours. Between 10 PM one night and 10 AM the next morning, the handover had taken place. We walked away with a company shell that had liabilities in it, and obviously we were very concerned about a raft of legal sort of litigation issues that might arise. But we went from having a business that was number 3 or 4 in its space in the country, with offices in Melbourne and Jakarta, and 10 days later we had nothing. In fact, we had no homes about a year later as well. So fairly sizable impact. That's the 2-minute synopsis of a much larger presentation that I've been giving, because after about a year it became a passionate thing for me. All of a sudden I realised people need to understand what can go wrong, and it's not just a technical matter. There's a whole of business matter that needs to be addressed in the cyber readiness, basically.
So, obviously you've had time to reflect on this. What actually did go wrong, and what advice can you give business that, to stop it happening to them? Yeah,
there's a number of things that went wrong prior to. With hindsight, you look back and say, gee, we know this went wrong in the week leading into the breach. We know this went wrong during the breach. But everything that went wrong all relates back to the risk and governance structures that we had in place. So without actually having the right business continuity planning in place that allows you to identify some of these potential risks, and it was certainly something that wasn't on the radar. We went through our processes of understanding what risks we had as a hosting company, and one of the big ones for us is stability, because you have a lot of servers and they go up and down, so you focus a lot on being able to mitigate or emit downtime from a specific server or piece of hardware failure. So our processes just didn't pick up in advance that this was a significant risk, and that this waterfall effect could actually take place. So the biggest lesson for mine is to actually take a very proactive approach to planning out how you would deal with a disaster. a cyber breach, rather than just looking for some prescriptive technologies to stick in front to try and prevent it from happening. Obviously that helps as well, but you do need to have very, very specific plans in place for dealing with a disaster when it happens.
So Troy, I can see you nodding there very much. Is Alex's situation, what happened to him, is it preventable?
If we could solve that, I think we'd make a lot of money, wouldn't we? Look, it's not 100% preventable, but it's certainly detectable, and certainly then respondable, if that kind of makes sense. So if you almost take it for granted these days with the lack of a traditional perimeter of an organisation, something is going to happen at some stage. It becomes more of a discussion around detect it, respond to it, execute those DR type processes, how you respond, how you engage the likes of the Privacy Commission to assist, and then it becomes that detect and respond approach rather than purely just block. We are now 100% okay. I think those days have passed us.
So Anthony, as you hear that story yourself, what are the sort of things running through your mind in terms of privacy of those clients and what has happened?
Yeah, well, I guess the message we try and push is exactly what has already been talked about having a kind of holistic risk assessment, so that you think about, really, you actually think about the risks and you think about the threats that are there. And the large investigations that I've been part of since I've been working in the Victorian office, and even before that when I was at the Federal office and the New South Wales office, tend to be where people just don't think about how they handle personal information at all. So often there are other pressures, there are commercial pressures in government, there are political pressures to get large projects done on time and having done yesterday. There tend to be a series of disasters to do with personal information, to do with water in Victoria during that period where it was thought that Melbourne was going to run out of water, and so there was a huge pressure to have those large water-based projects done. So there were a couple of fairly major audits and investigations we were involved in for those projects. And the last thing they thought about really was personal information, yet they were dealing with huge amounts of personal information. And so it is that thing of thinking beforehand and using the guidance that we put out, or speaking to us about how you protect. And it's not, in a sense, it's our major concern is personal information, but it's all of your corporate information as well, of course. So our office is about to take on new responsibilities and have responsibilities for data security across government, whether it's personal information or not. And it's concentrating our minds a bit because we'll have data protection or security or something like that in our title, will automatically become a target for hackers. Not that our information is particularly interesting or lucrative, but people will want to hack in simply because we'll have security in our name. So they'll want to show they can do it in a sense. So that then raises the stakes as well, so that we'll have to do a bit of thinking about protecting our own, because that'd be the reputational risk for a data protection agency of having a major breach kind of really would end it. Certainly you wouldn't be the same staff there the day after, I don't think. So that's one of the things. But it really is that taking a breath and thinking about what you need to do and having in place plans and having policies in place and thinking not just technological answers, but often the matters that we've dealt with, they're usually stuff-ups, and they're usually the human factor is the key. And so you need to think about that as well as having whatever technological protections you can have.
Before we go around to the different panels, I'd like just for us to discuss the cloud for a moment. And perhaps Bartek, would you like to have a go at describing what is the cloud? Because we hear about the cloud all the time, and I think that most of us probably are using the cloud without even realising we are using the cloud. So what are we really talking about here?
Okay,
others can jump in as well.
Please. The cloud is basically a set of internet-connected services. So where it really started and what is most familiar to most people is email. So your email is hosted in a cloud environment, which is basically a set of locations sorted by a large company that provides a service to you. A few things have happened that have made the cloud really ubiquitous in our lives at the moment. One of them is the fact that these services are now spread geographically. So where you have your email or anything like that, it's not stored in a central location, it's really stored all around the world, and there's a lot of networking technology that's enabled that to happen. And the next thing is that the services have moved from beyond just email to virtually anything. An example on the accounting front is a lot of small business owners are very familiar with MYOB as their accounting package, but there are very strong competitors that provide accounting packages in the cloud. One example is Xero, another one is SaaSU, and even MYOB has now a cloud-related offering. So to store all your accounting in the cloud. And that goes across any service that your business might need, you can get as a cloud-based option. What that gives you is, and the reason that the cloud has become, I suppose, such an advantage for some businesses is, first of all, you don't need physical infrastructure. You don't necessarily need a lot of the IT infrastructure to be able to host these things yourself. When it's for email, as an example, you don't need your own IT server sitting in the corner hosting your email. You use a cloud service. Secondly, a lot of the cloud services that you pay for, such as the ones that I mentioned around accounting, allow you to build on a pay-as-you-go. So you don't have internal infrastructure with some services on there that can handle thousands of users when you only have 3, 4, 5 people using it. And that's what these services provide. And they use those economies of scale to basically run their businesses. I'll let my panellists jump in with anything that I've missed.
Well, I was going to ask Troy, actually, I'll come to you, Alex, but I do know of one government department, at least, that refuses to let staff upload anything to like Dropbox or any of those kind of cloud services. What is Australia Post's attitude to that?
So I think the risk-based approach is the one that we tend to take. So there's some great benefits to cloud services like Dropbox, like the accounting packages, even applications as a service, or even just storage platform, whatever it is. There's a whole heap of different benefits. I think there's multiple levels of cloud as well, without trying to get too technical. So certainly, traditional public cloud, those like Gmail or something that's just out there, you never touch it, you never see it. We will define a series of activities and things that are okay to be used in that public cloud service. Other stuff where we want a private cloud, a cloud that we build ourselves that still gives you all of the cloud infrastructure, but it's more in our control. We'll have another set of things that is allowable there. Then there'll be a range of things that just can't leave our environment and protected by everything else that we kind of put around it. So look, we do allow storage in cloud, let's call it that, so like the Dropboxes. However, we've got a whole lot of controls about what information is allowed to go out there. Public media releases, fine, put them in the cloud. Confidential board papers, don't put them in the cloud.
Alex, you got something to add? Did you think that was a good or a bad thing?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of advantages to the cloud. The biggest catch for the cloud, and certainly for small businesses, is that definition of what is cloud. And I saw last month, I think it might have been, the government came out with a white paper or a positioning statement around their acceptance or acknowledgement that cloud is the way to go, and that they're looking to head down that path. But there was a sentence in there that resonated with me, and that was that they felt that there was sufficient consumer protection laws in place not to warrant putting in specific regulations or controls over cloud environments or cloud providers. And formerly having a public cloud environment, one of the biggest issues there is it's a race to the bottom. Most small businesses, the easiest way to relate to the cloud is that you're probably using a hosting provider for a website, and it might be using a Joomla or a WordPress backend, and you're hosting it with a provider that says we provide a geographically redundant cloud service. Because there's no regulation in place, that geographical redundancy could be that there's a server with VMware sitting in a garage with a blue cable running through the garage, through the garden into their study, and there's a second server where the data goes between those two, and then it's connected through their internet connection. If they're fortunate to have NBN, you won't notice the difference. There's just some specific risks with the cloud that really need to be considered still, given that there's no regulation specifically around the provision of cloud services in Australia.
Anthony, any concerns about our data if it's going up into the cloud?
Well, certainly our office we were one of the first to put guidance out about the cloud, which now is a couple of years old, so we probably need to do it again, I think, because the context has changed quite significantly. But there are some concerns around it. It really is around that level of control that you have and So to the extent you can, what the law requires is you take reasonable steps to protect the information that you've collected or that you hold from misuse or unauthorised loss or disclosure and those sorts of things. And that becomes quite difficult when you don't even really know geographically where it is, and often the process by which you enter into cloud services is all the power and knowledge is in their hands and you're clicking something. So that's really the most generic type of public cloud where it is just a ticker box on a website. It's really quite difficult for you to take any steps really to protect the information, let alone reasonable ones.
So in terms of, is there a way to see, is there an accreditation standard for cloud-based services that people can check to ensure that their data is safe? Alex?
Kind of covered that partially in that previous response, but technically there's no specific standard that's in place that requires a public cloud provider to adhere to. What we are seeing is a lot of larger organisations, and you might be able to answer this one a bit further, but a lot of larger organisations that are using outsourcing to data centres and other providers are starting to put a requirement for ISO 27001 accreditation, which is essentially a accreditation that you've got an information security management system operational or in place, and it gives, I think, doesn't give full protection, but it certainly gives some comfort that there's processes and procedures and controls in place to ensure the management of the information that's being held there.
My question was to Alex. Whilst I understand one important thing is privacy and not letting other people steal your information, did you have backup procedures in place when your company was attacked? And if so, if you didn't, would having had backup procedures in place have saved your company because you would have been able to resort to your backups?
Thanks for the question. We did have backup procedures in place. We had quite a number of different procedures. We had a very large virtualised disaster recovery process in place that was pushing snapshots of every single server across devices and across multiple locations in different data centres. The reason we had the end result was not because of a lack of backups. Suitability of those backups in that type of scenario, that's a different question. I think there's certainly some discussion around the suitability of a virtualised DR process in that sort of situation. But the reason we ran out of time is because of human errors that occurred prior to those events that created the situation that the recovery process took so long. And if it wasn't for those, we wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't be sitting here today saying that we lost a business out of it. So most of the end result of our problems were as a result of control errors rather than technical or backup concerns.